Hey everybody, it's Randy Ray again here at Driftwood Ranch, and this is The Literate Texan with my latest video about the 14 books that I have on my December or holiday or Christmas TBR, my to be read list. Like most of my to be read lists, it's more hopeful or aspirational than anything else. I'll probably read 14 books in December. I don't know how many of them are going to be from my to-be-read list. But I've got them stacked up here, and I'm going to talk about it. In my last video, I talked about this one already. It's American Christmas Stories. It's an anthology from the Library of America. It's an anthology of 59 Christmas stories chosen and edited by Connie Willis. From the introduction, I love Christmas. I never complain about the crush at the mall, or the store starting to decorate before Halloween or Labor Day, or having to buy presents. I like buying presents and going caroling and watching Love Actually and White Christmas. Interesting choices. I like bubble lights and snow and Starbucks eggnog lattes, pretty much everything about the holiday season. In fact, except fruitcake and saccharine Hallmark TV movies. Second one-upper there, I love fruitcake. Anybody wants to send me a fruitcake, you just let me know. And I even like Hallmark TV movies, although, they're more to laugh at than to laugh with. And among all the things I love about Christmas, one of the best is its stories. That's from the introduction. The problem is, a lot of these aren't really stories. A lot of these are just really small one-page or two-page vignettes with no real plot, no action, nothing happens. Some of the stuff in here is just downright depressing, too. But there are some gems in here that are worth reading, and I haven't finished it yet either. And I don't hate this book. I'm not going to give it 2 stars, but I'm not going to give it more than 3 stars either. But from the table of contents here, I can tell you some of these that I've actually really enjoyed. Let's see here. The Christmas of the Phonograph Records by Mark Sandoz. That was kind of a standout. Joan Didion's The Big Rock Candy Figging Pudding Pitfall. I thought that was really nice. The Santa Claus Compromise by Thomas M. Ditch was good, but anything by Thomas M. Ditch is going to be good. Pete Hamill's The Christmas Kid, I really liked it. And All Through the House by Ed McBain. That was an interesting choice. I liked it a lot, too. My best recommendation, and I haven't finished this yet either, so far would probably be the crime stories and the ghost stories. There's a ghost story in here called Thurlow's Christmas Story by John Kendrick Bangs. I was not able to find it online. I believe it's still under copyright. But it was terrific, and it was well worth reading. There was also a really cute fairy tale from William Dean Howells called Christmas Every Day, which is really old and much better than you'd expect from such an old story. It hadn't aged much at all. There's an O. Henry story in here, but it's not The Gift of the Magi. It's a Chaparral Christmas gift. I didn't think it was particularly good. But A Gift of the Magi was probably too obvious to include, maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so. But yeah, it's an interesting book. American Christmas Stories, Library of America. If you're looking for something to read for the holidays, you can probably do worse, but you can do a whole lot better if you don't mind finding something used. This is called A Literary Christmas. And I bought this when it first came out many, many years ago. I'm going to look at the copyright page to see when that was. It's out of print now, unfortunately. But this was edited and has an introduction by Lily Golden. A Literary Christmas, Great Contemporary Christmas Stories. And this is just marvelous. This came out in 1992, which is about when I bought it the first time. I'm sure you can find it at a used bookstore or online fairly cheap. That's where I got my copy. I had to liquidate my library at one point. So my old copy I had to get rid of, but it's okay. It was soft cover, and I opted for the hardcover when I bought this new one. But this book is absolutely terrific. This has Augie Wren's Christmas Story by Paul Auster in it, which is fabulous. If you've seen a movie called Smoke, starring Harvey Keitel and William Hurt, it was based in large part on Augie Wren's Christmas Story. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And then there's a story by Mark Richard called The Birds for Christmas. I love The Birds for Christmas. I read it out loud to my roommate yesterday, and she loved it too. Then, let's see, what else do I want to point out that's really impressive in here? Put Yourself in My Shoes by Raymond Carver. Raymond Carver has never disappointed me yet. I've read this multiple times, but I try to read it again every Christmas. I thought Gift of the Magi was in this one, but I guess it's not. But that's okay. We'll get farther along in my to be read list and you'll see. I'm going to read an excerpt from this book. I'm going to read part of The Birds for Christmas just to give you an idea. I love this story. And I'm not going to read too much of it. I'm just going to read off the first page. The Birds for Christmas. We wanted the birds for Christmas. We had seen the commercials for it on the television, donated third hand by the Merchant Seamen's and Sailors Rest Home. A big black and white zenith of cracked plastic and no knobs. A dime stuck in the channel selector. You could adjust the picture and have no sound, or hi-fi sound and no picture. We just wanted the picture. We wanted to see the birds. The old head nurse said not to get our hopes up. It was a late show, after lights out, the night before Christmas Eve. She said it would wake the babies and scare the little boys down on the far end of the ward. Besides, she said, she didn't think it was the type of movie we should be seeing Christmas week. She said she was certain there would be Rudolph and Frosty on. That would be more appropriate for us to watch on the night before Christmas. Fuck Frosty, Michael Christian said to me. I've seen that 100 times. I want to see the birds, man. I want to see those birds get all up in them people's hair. That's some real Christmas TV to me. Anyway, story it's wonderful. It's absolutely marvelous. And the other stories in here are terrific too. I'm really excited about reading them. And I'm looking forward to finishing American Christmas Stories so I can dig into a literary Christmas, which I recommend you find used if you get a chance. Okay, also, for some reason, and actually, I know what the reason is. I say for some reason. The Lord of the Rings movies all came out around Christmas time. And so Christmas time always makes me think of the Lord of the Rings. Earlier this year, when we did Spring into Adventure, I reread The Hobbit, which I've read 1,000,000 times. I think I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings 6 or 7 times before I was in 7th grade. Loved them. But, what's that saying about we put away childish things? Eventually, I started reading other stuff, and I'll occasionally go back and reread The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, but it's been a long time. It's probably been 20 years since I've read The Lord of the Rings. But I've got this beautiful edition here. Bought this at an estate sale from a dear friend of mine, a widow. And this was part of her husband's library. And I just love this edition. And I'm going to read this over December, and it might lap into January too. Because even though I'm doing Proust in 2025, that's not the only thing I'm reading in 2025. I'm devoting an hour a day to Marcel Proust in 2025, but I'll be doing other reading too. But yeah, there's not much to say about The Lord of the Rings. If you're watching my channel and you know anything about books, you've heard of J.R.R. Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings. If nothing else, you've seen or heard of the movies, which are terrific. Okay, so this is a quirky one. It's called So You Want to Be a Game Master. Everything you need to start your tabletop adventure for Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, and other systems by Justin Alexander. Okay, so some of y'all know that I'm a fantasy role-playing guy. I am currently running a Pendragon campaign, which is similar to Dungeons & Dragons, except all the characters are knights during King Arthur period. And I've been game mastering since I got my first Dungeons & Dragons set way back in 1982. I was 12 years old. And, so I feel like I'm competent enough game master, but you can always learn new tricks. And this came highly recommended to me, so I went ahead and bought it. I've skimmed through it. It looks pretty interesting. I'm sure I'll pick up something out of here. I've got a book here called The Box of Delights by John Masefield from the New York Review Children's Collection. This was recommended in Book by Book by Michael Dirda, which is a published version of his Commonplace book, basically. But there's loads of recommendations of books in there organized in different categories. If you haven't read Book by Michael Dirda, I recommend it. It's really good. I've got an autographed copy of it. I didn't bring it to the desk for the show, but that's where I found out about this one. And I haven't read it yet. So, this is from the back cover. Christmas ought to be brought up to date. It ought to have gangsters and airplanes and a lot of automatic pistols. Okay. Strange things begin to happen the minute young Kay Harker boards the train to go home for Christmas and finds himself under observation by 2 very shifty-looking characters. Arriving at his destination, the boy is immediately accosted by a bright-eyed old man with a mysterious message. The wolves are running. I love mysterious messages like that. Whenever I need a mysterious message, I always leave the same one. The monkeys got into the banana patch is the one I usually leave. I think I heard it on an episode of Better Call Saul or something, but I just thought it was funny. So yeah, it doesn't matter what the hidden message is supposed to mean, and many of my friends are often confused, but they're used to that dealing with me. Anyway, the wolves are running. Soon danger is everywhere as a gang of criminals headed by the notorious wizard Abner Brown and his witch wife Sylvia Daisy Pouncer gets to work. What does Abner Brown want? The magic box that the old man has entrusted to Kay, which allows him to travel freely not only in space, but in time too. The gang will stop at nothing to carry out their plan, even kidnapping Kay's friend, the tough little Maria Jones, and threatening to cancel Christmas celebrations altogether. But with the help of his allies, including an intrepid mouse, a squadron of Roman soldiers, the legendary Herney the Hunter, and the inventor of the Box of Delights himself, Kay just may be able to rescue his friend, foil Abner Brown's plot, and save Christmas too. At once a thriller, a romp, and a spellbinding fantasy, The Box of Delights is a great English children's book and a perfect Christmas treat. It is a unique work and will often be reread. The beauties, all the delights that keep on emerging from the box are so exquisite and quite unlike anything I've seen elsewhere. That last paragraph, starting with, it is a unique work, that's from C.S. Lewis. That's a quote from C.S. Lewis, who you don't see quoted on a lot of book covers. Anyway, lovely book. I'm really looking forward to this. The full title is The Box of Delights, or When the Wolves Were Running, by John Masefield, illustrated by Judith Masefield. And God, this looks terrific. So many books, so little time. Every book I pick up, I want to start reading it immediately. All right, so I'm in the middle of Bound to Please by Michael Dirda. He's a book critic that I admire. It's Bound to Please, an extraordinary one-volume literary education, essays on great writers and their books. I've been reading this one for a little while now. It's huge. It's 500, 600 pages. Like a lot of Harold Bloom books, it is really useful if you're looking for something to read. Michael Dirda rarely steers me wrong. But most of the recommendations in here are recommendations for biographies of various writers. And of course, when you read a biography of a writer, you almost always get a bibliography. And I've started a couple of the books on his list that have been recommended in here. There's a biography of Samuel Pepys that I'm reading, but I'm only a chapter or two in, and I'm not that interested in it. I think I'd be better off with the actual diaries than the biography. But the autobiography of Anthony Trollope was terrific, and I loved it. And I've started working on a couple of Trollope novels, too. So that's interesting. I'll probably finish that in December. I've got the Selected Stories of O. Henry. It's a Christmas tradition in my family for me to read The Gift of the Magi to my daughters, who always laugh at me because I've been reading it to them every Christmas for 22 years now. I still get choked up at the end of that story. And it is the cheesiest, most manipulative story. I don't mind having my strings pulled, but most of the times, I don't want to see the strings. But with The Gift of the Magi, I don't mind seeing the strings. It's just wonderful. It's just wonderful. And his other stories are good too. I had a huge omnibus edition that had all of O. Henry's stories in it. And the guy I hired to move me did not move my entire library. And I know this because that book's gone missing. And it was in an out-of-the-way place anyway. So I guess I should take some of the blame for that. Sometimes when you try to save money, you lose money. You regret it. This is The Barn, The Secret History of a Murder in Mississippi. This has got nothing to do with the holidays. I've got an old friend, an old girlfriend that I reconnected with recently. And I suggested to her that we do a buddy read. She likes nonfiction. So this is a shocking and revelatory account of the murder of Emmett Till, laying bare the global forces that converged on the Mississippi Delta in the long lead up to the crime and how the truth was hidden for so long. The author's family farm in Mississippi is 23 miles from the site of one of the most notorious and consequential killings in American history, yet he learned of it only when he left the state for college. To this day, fundamental truths about the crime are hidden and unknown, including where it took place and how many people were involved. This is no accident. The cover-up began at once and is ongoing. In August of 1955, two men, Roy Bryant and J.W. Milan, were charged with the torture and murder of the 14-year-old Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi. After their acquittal, in a mockery of justice, they gave a false confession to a journalist, lying about where the long night of hell took place and who was involved. In fact, Wright-Thompson reveals at least 8 people can be placed at the scene, which was inside the barn of one of the killers, on a plot of land within the 36 square mile grid, whose official name is Township 22 North, Range 4 West, also home to the birthplace of the Blues on nearby Dockery Plantation. Anyway, the guy who wrote this lived really close to the barn where the murder and the torture took place. And, but like I say, he didn't even know about it for the longest time. It's pretty important history. I lived in Wiley, Texas for several years, and there was a famous murder there. And they made TV shows and stuff about it. And everybody in Wiley knew that it was the home to that thing. So this was different. All right, I've got some stuff on my Kindle too. I read ebooks as well. One of the ebooks that I am in the middle of right now is a biography of Marcel Proust. It's called Marcel Proust, A Life. It's by William C. Carter. That's what it looks like. I'm about 75 pages in, but it's 1,500 pages long. I guess if you're going to write a biography of Marcel Proust, you're going to feel obligated to make it long, right? And now, let's see here. How do I get... That's one of the ones I'm reading. Also, I asked my good friend Steve Donahue to recommend a romance novel to me. So I am also reading Come Be My Love by Diana Brown. It's a Signet Regency romance. An independent young beauty spurns the most eligible bachelors as she plots to snare a maddeningly elusive nobleman. Fabulous, says Good Housekeeping. Great cover art. Steve wasn't sure I'd like this, but I like romances. And also, Come Be My Love is a reference to Christopher Marlowe's The Passionate Shepherd to His Love, which is a great poem. And he quotes it at the beginning of the book, Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove that hills and the valleys, dales and fields, or woods or steepy mountain yields. That's the start of it. I mean, Christopher Marlowe, fascinating. Yeah, so I'm in the middle of reading that. I've got a book here called Living and Dying with Marcel Proust that I hope to get read this month also before we start the Proust project. I love the cover art on this. Isn't that gorgeous? It's a painting. Try not to get the glare on there. This is written by Christopher Pendergrass. Living and Dying with Marcel Proust. The origins of this book are the remnants of a previous one, a heap of unused jottings and scribbles, set aside with no clear notion of what might become of them beyond the vague idea of a further venture that would begin with an excursus on the theme of walks in Search of Lost Time. Blah, 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 blah. His sentences go on as long as Proust's. I've read part of Swan's Way before, but I never got it very far with it. So that's on my list for December. You know what I think? I may have more than 14 books on this list. Little Big by John Crowley is one that I'm also very excited about. As you can tell, I think fantasy and Christmas are pretty well aligned. Little Big is, this just looks fascinating to me. It's about a normal, ordinary guy who, I guess he's a drunk, but winds up married to a fairy in fairyland. And it's long. It's like 500 pages, but highly recommended by no less than Harold Bloom as one of the best fantasies of all time. I have a friend who works for the Dallas Public Library. It's her absolute favorite book. I've been meaning to read it for years and haven't gotten to it. I don't know why that is. So I've also got Nothing That Meets the Eye by Patricia Highsmith, which is a collection of her previously unpublished short stories. God, what a great cover that is. So I've read one of these stories in here, and it was really good. I'm trying to read more short stories lately. I have a tendency to get lost in novels. But I've got other stuff that I'm dipping in and out of all the time. I've finished a couple of things, too. I just finished reading. Okay, this is one of note. The Plague Court Murders I'm reading as a buddy read with my friend Jim at Mystery and Mayhem. This is a John Dixon Carr book, and it's the first in the Sir Henry Merivale mysteries. And John Dixon Carr is famous for being the expert in the locked room mystery. Locked room mystery, if you don't know, and I didn't know until this last year, but a locked room mystery is one that takes place in a locked room. It's an impossible crime. And so you have to figure out, well, because the place is locked from the inside, but there's nobody in there, other than the corpse. So how could you kill somebody if you couldn't get in there, right? So, yeah, I'm reading that right now with Jim, and I don't know when we're going to make a video about it because I hadn't finished reading it yet, and he hasn't either. I did just finish something else, too, and I filed it away. Okay, I read Clara reads Proust, and this was really good. It was really short. Clara reads Proust, and it's by, I'm going to mispronounce this, Stéphane Carlier. But it was a delightful little short novel about a hairdresser who reads Proust, and it really does change her life. I don't know. Is Proust going to change my life? Is it too late for me to change my life? I'm going to be 55 in February. I don't know. I have my doubts as to how much I'm going to change at this point. I'm an old dog trying to learn new tricks anyway. And then the other book that I just finished this month was called Challenge the Impossible, which is The Final Problems of Dr. Sam Hawthorne by Edward D. Hawk. Okay, so Edward D. Hawk wrote short stories for Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine and for Alfred Hitchcock Magazine. And he was published in every issue of Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine for 32 years straight. He wrote over 1,000 short stories. And he had ongoing characters. One of his ongoing characters that I really liked was Nick Velvet, which is a terrific name. Nick Velvet was a thief that you could hire to steal anything, but it had to be something that was worthless. He wouldn't steal anything that was valuable. That was his big gimmick. And then he would charge you $15,000 or $20,000. The price went up as the years went by in that series of stories. But this particular set of books that I just showed you was the final set of Dr. Sam Hawthorne books. Dr. Sam Hawthorne is a delightful protagonist. He's a doctor, and these are all examples of historical fiction and more locked room mysteries. Sam Hawthorne, of course, has the same initials as Sherlock Holmes, S.H., and he's just, the stories always have a little bit of a frame as if he's telling the story, but he's telling it from the time he's 80 years old to someone who's rarely identified, but occasionally identified, over a drink, usually a scotch. But, just really competent, enjoyable, short mystery stories. And he wrote a whole mess of them. That was the final volume in the series, and it's set during World War II. The earlier volumes are set in earlier decades. So, yeah. But anyway, highly recommend anything you can get by Edward D. Hawk. Since his death, they've been collecting a lot of his stories into omnibus editions, and they're all well worth getting. That's it for my 14 books I'm going to read in December, and I'm sure that might not have been 14 books, but who's counting anyway? I'm counting, but I'm not really counting. I've read 114 or 115 books this year. It's been a good year for reading for me, even though I haven't made a lot of videos, because, as I've said, I've spent a good percentage of my time over the last 9 months or so in the hospital. The good news is I'm starting to walk on my own again. I'm not using a walker or a cane, at least part of the time. When someone's home, when no one's here but me, I have a roommate, but when no one's here but me, I use the walker and the cane just to be sure, and I make sure I keep my cell phone with me so I can call the paramedics if I fall. But having suffered from a number of falls this year, it's really nice to be able to walk without assistance again. I'm not going to be going for walks in the park anytime soon, but yeah, I'm on the mend and I'm doing a lot better. So with any luck, knock on wood, you're going to be seeing videos from me on a more regular basis. I know that in November I only published 2 videos, and I've already done 3 videos for December, so I'm ahead of there. Anyway, now I'm really starting to digress. Until next time, stay hydrated, stay sexy, folks. There'll be another video up soon.